you'll see a menu right on top. You want to navigate over to admin. Once you're in the admin section, you want to go to the middle column here, and by the green arrow, you'll see tracking info. Okay, so go ahead and select that. This page in the top left-hand corner, where the first green arrow is, will show you your actual tracking ID. And then below, where the other green arrow is the actual code that needs to be applied to all the pages on your site. So there are a couple ways that we can install analytics. The easiest way is going to be if you have some kind of web development platform, a content management system, you know, something like WordPress. We'll have plugins like Yoast, and other content management systems will have options where you can just enter in that code and we'll automatically publish this tracking element across the site. That's going to be generally your easiest option. Your other option is grabbing this actual code snippet, and then it needs to be applied to every single page that you want to track on the site. If you're an enterprise site and you've got thousands of pages, obviously you're going to want to have a scalable way to apply that code. But as I mentioned, ideally, you're using some kind of platform that makes this easy. Most of these that you see here are going to have some kind of options. If it's not built into the CMS, a lot of them will have either plugins if it's WordPress, or they'll have different kind of add-on mini applications that you can use to make this job really easy. So let's go back over here. That really is our first segment in terms of installation. It really is pretty straightforward. So there's a lot of information out there if you're having trouble. Let's take a quick look at permissions. So once you have installed Google Analytics, you've confirmed that you're tracking data, you're going to want to set up user permissions for the various people that you want to access this account. So you may have in-house people that you're working with very closely that you want to be able to share data with and that you want to have access to all information. You may have other people within the company that you want to create permissions so that they can see information, but maybe they don't have control over editing the account and making changes that could create issues. And then you may have something, where you have consultants or outside people that you want to grant access, and you really want to restrict their capabilities. So again, we're in the admin section. You go to the middle column here and select user management. You're going to get a screen that looks like this where you can actually input an email. We usually will select notify this user by email, so they get a notification knowing that they've been added. And then over to the right, there's this drop down, read and analyze, and then this is giving you permissions for that user. So read and analyze is just like it sounds. It's pretty much read-only access. Collaborate is going to allow various team members to create annotations and to make changes within the account where they can share information. Edit will allow these users to actually make changes to the account and how things are set up. And then manage users is just like it sounds. You're going to be able to add or remove users. So depending on who you're granting access to, you'll want to kind of customize those permissions. So that's pretty straightforward. So let's move on to the next section here. It's organic traffic, right? So if you have any experience with SEO, this is one of the big KPIs that people are looking at on a very broad level. Organic traffic is all the traffic that's coming in from the search engines from the organic section, so excluding paid search. The positive thing here is this is a really relevant key performance indicator, right? It's telling us all the traffic that's coming in from the search engines that's related to SEO. However, one of the issues with looking at all organic traffic is you've got a lot of variables in there that can impact organic traffic that are not necessarily only influenced by SEO. So you can have brand traffic that's in there. If you have events and different things going on that would increase organic traffic, that's all going to be coming in there as well. So again, this is a really important metric to be looking at. At the same time, we need to understand that there's a lot going on in that number. And then we'll get into some ways you can parse that out to understand it better. So this is really pretty simple. From the main audience overview, go over to Add Segment, where you see the little green arrow here. Click on that, and then you're going to have options to segment this traffic into a number of different channels. In this step, I removed all traffic because I don't want to be seeing all traffic. and I've selected organic traffic. So I really just want to be looking at organic traffic for this exercise. After that, I hit apply. Boom, we're now back to the previous screen. We have an indication up top that now we're looking at organic traffic. So this is good. So now we're getting some good information here. We have the number of visits over the last 30-day period, the number of actual users, a number of page views, pages per session, average session duration, bounce rate, and percentage of new sessions. So already we're learning a little bit about the differences between our organic traffic and our total traffic on the site, which is really useful. So, we talked about organic traffic briefly here. It's pretty important, but there are some, other factors here that don't make it the best measure of SEO performance. So we coined a term, or an acronym, LPOV, stands for Landing Page Organic Visits, and we started using this a while back at our company to try to get a better measure of true SEO opportunities. We used to, within Google Analytics, have access to a lot of keyword data, and it was awesome, but then at some point Google decided to remove that keyword data. So now if you dial down into analytics and try to look for keyword data, you get this broad category of not provided, and sometimes up to 98% of all the data is not provided, so it's been removed. So this is a bit of a workaround so that we can try to remove some of those outside factors. So we're removing branded data. We're removing data from outside influencing factors. This really is a better measure of SEO-generated opportunities. And essentially what we're doing here is that we're going to remove the home page from this data set, and we're going to remove other brand-focused and company-focused pages that we would expect users to find after searching for a brand or company name. So really what we're trying to focus on is all of the inner pages that are more keyword relevant and pages that we have optimized to try to capture new opportunities. And specifically, we're talking about people that are in the awareness phase of kind of the broad marketing funnel. When someone's looking for you by name, they're already past that awareness phase. They know who you are. They've heard something. Maybe they saw a commercial or an ad or your team or something that led them to you, and that's kind of a different stage of that kind of broad marketing funnel. So we really feel like landing page organic visits is a better measure of the actual SEO success. So I mean, this shows the impact of new content that we've added, new pages that we've optimized, crawl errors that we've resolved to allow Google to crawl more pages on our site and index those pages to generate traffic. And it can also reflect off-page SEO efforts, things we're doing with link building or social media. Okay, so let's dive in here, and we'll show you how to filter this data so that you can look at landing page organic visits. Okay, so from really any screen when you're logged in here, you have your menu to the left. You will want to go down and select behavior. That'll open up the sub-menu. You'll want to select site content. And then the third option down is landing pages. So go ahead and select landing pages. At this stage, notice that we are still filtered for organic traffic. That's important if you're looking at landing page organic visits. Once you've selected landing pages, you're now looking at all the organic traffic that is coming directly from the search engines to inner pages on your site. So if we were looking at all pages, we'd be looking at visits that came from the home page, people that went to different sections of the site and then are arriving. We care about the pages that are capturing visits directly from the search engine. Okay? And then the next step, if you see to the blue arrow to the right, is this advanced option. So you want to go ahead and select the advanced option. When you select that option, you're going to see a menu drop down with a couple options. Under the first option, we're going to select exclude. The second option here is landing page. And then the third option, for this exercise, I've just done exactly matching. But essentially, we're going through and pulling out our branded pages, starting with the home page, right? So that's what we're doing. We're trying to pull that data out of this data set so that we can get rid of that branded and outside influencing factors. The easiest way to do this is to just enter in the home page. You don't enter in the whole website as you see. You're just going to do the URL structure. This particular site kind of has a funky URL structure the way it's set up, so it's /index.aspx. Most commonly, you're just going to see a slash there, and that represents the home page. If you want to really dial down and do this in a more accurate way, you can then go underneath this menu right under where the landing page exclude option is, and it says add a dimension or metric. You can add additional landing pages that you want to exclude. So if you have some other about us or other key pages that you know that people are coming into after searching your brand, then you can exclude those as well. Once you do that, then you're going to get a pretty solid list of the pages outside of the home page that are capturing organic traffic directly from the search engines. Okay. Once you've actually submitted this, you'll see that now you've got a little notification down there that says that your advanced filter is on, just so that you don't forget that you are looking at altered data. But now we have landing page organic visit data. So right away, looking at this versus our organic traffic is going to yield some insights, right? So we're going to be able to see, okay, for our fresh opportunities, how are they responding to our site when they arrive versus the big picture, versus the total. Typically, when we're looking at landing page organic visits, we'll see things like bounce rate go up. We may see average session duration, engagement. We may see those things going down. And again, that's reflective of the stage of the marketing funnel that these users are at. So again, in the awareness stage, they're doing more research. They're trying to figure things out. They're not sold on your web page as being the utmost solution, right? When people are looking for your brand, you can expect that they're probably going to stay on your site longer, go to more pages, and engage more with your website. Okay. So this is really landing page organic visits as a whole. I will say this is one of the main KPIs that we measure as an agency, and we find to be a strong correlating factor with SEO success. So it is something we monitor and we feel is really important. All right, so let's get into trend data. We talked about landing page organic visits. We talked about organic traffic, but so far we're really just looking at this in a limited point in time, which without comparing various periods, it's really limited on how valuable that is. If anything, it's just kind of just setting up a benchmark for us, right? So trend data is really just updating our date ranges. We can compare month over month, so we can say, okay, we're going to look at all of April versus previous 30 days and look at those trends. If we're in a seasonal business, say we're ramping up, coming up into winter, we expect, rapid increases from October to December, October to January, and then we expect, a wind down going into spring. Then looking at monthly data year over year can be really insightful, right? Because it's going to be hard to have takeaways when you already have natural movement because of your industry. So going back and saying, okay, well, look at this April versus last April, and that'll give you some better insights. It further complicates this, like when we're talking about the snow sports industry, because so much of that industry is driven by weather and snowfall. So I mean, that's another factor you have to consider when you're looking at it. If you're looking at the 2010-11 data versus the next year, that's something you got to take into account. But at a minimum, at least you're looking at the same period over various years. And then you can do full year-over-year data once you've got up to 2 years data. This can be really insightful. I would say that one of the reasons this is really important is because the most successful people at SEO are doing it over the long term. SEO moves slow, and it's not something where you ramp it up and in 6 months, you're king of the universe or whatever. So the most successful people, especially the clients that we've had for multiple years, because you continue to pick up momentum over time as you get better and better and you get farther along. And then lastly, you can set up custom data sets. This can be really useful. Typically when I'm looking at different date ranges, I don't usually dial down much smaller than a 2-week time frame. SEO fluctuates a lot, right? So search demand from a day-to-day basis will change. The number of people searching for snowboard gear today is going to be different than it is tomorrow. So if you start trying to go down to like daily ranges and weekly ranges, the accuracy and insights from that data may just not be as might not be as strong. There are some exceptions if you've got like a specific event that you're trying to measure the impact of. So maybe, you know, we're trying to get out of a penalty and we just got a bunch of links removed and we know it happened on, you know, this specific date. We're 2 weeks past that date and we're like, man, we really need to go in and see if we're seeing any kind of trend. We can look at the 2 weeks after whatever that event was, compare it with the previous period, and we can start to see some early trends. So those custom data ranges can be really useful as well. All right, so this is really easy to do, and again, if you are someone who uses Google Analytics regularly, you're already doing this. So go over to the top right-hand screen, select the drop-down for the date range. You're going to be able to set your date range right there. By default, it's going to be the last 30 days, but you can go in and set it to whatever you want. Then once you set your date range, select the Compare To option, and then that's going to give you some options here for setting how you want it to be compared. So you can do a custom date range. You can do the previous period, which is just going to be the same number of days, but the previous period. So if you're looking at a 2-week period, it's going to be compared against the previous 2 weeks, same with a month. And then there's the previous year option. So say you're just looking at Q1 of a certain year, you can go ahead and look at that, you know, Q1 compared with the previous year, and you know, that information can be really useful. Okay, so this is just looking at month-over-month data. This particular website looks like they had a slight increase, not awesome, not bad. So maybe I want to look back and say, okay, well, it looks like we're going in the right direction. How do we look versus the previous year? And we're looking at previous year's data. Okay, we're seeing some decent gains. Again, not great, but being able to sort in this way will help you understand if you're progressing or if maybe you're slowing down. So again, really useful to look at these trends. Okay, so let's move on here. We're going to take a look at Google Annotations, Analytics Annotations. Annotations are really just little notes that we can add into the dashboard that correlate with specific dates and indicate, you know, maybe events or variables that you want to consider when you're going back and doing analysis of this data. So this could be, you know, new pages that you added to the site, or maybe new pages that you optimized. You know, maybe you had, you know, a couple thousand 404 errors that now you got resolved on a specific date, and you want to see if maybe that has an impact. That would be another good one. If you launch a new site, certainly you want to know that date so that you can track, you know, that transition. Maybe you had some valuable backlinks that you had confirmed on some really high-power relevant domains. Toxic links, if you're in a penalty situation, you know, maybe you're going through and removing links and really trying to gauge out, well, which batch of these links is having the, you know, is causing our problems. Media coverage, so if you're on the news, or if you have a big seminar, an event, you know, you're at a trade show, anything like that you would expect to increase traffic or affect, you know, your data are good things to put in there. An algorithm update, right? So if Google comes and releases another algorithm, that's another really important one that you'd want to annotate in there. So we'll go ahead and jump in, and I'll show you how to add annotations. Again, this is a really simple practice. So when you're at the audience overview here, you'll see a tab in the middle of the screen. Just go ahead and select that tab, and then you'll see off to the right an option for Create New Annotation. Okay, so go ahead and select Create New Annotation, and then you're going to be given the option to input a date, a note, set the visibility, and then save. So date is straightforward. Make sure in your note that you're putting enough of a description in there that you really understand what was done so that you recognize it or your team members recognize it for what it is. And then visibility, that's pretty straightforward. So are you sharing this information with your team, with the other people that have those permissions? Or do you want this to be kind of like a private note for yourself because, you know, maybe you have something you don't want to share yet? After you set those, you'll go ahead and hit Save. And then after that, when you return to the previous page, you're going to see a little icon at the base of this data display, and that little notes icon is the annotation, and it's lined up with a specific date. In this case, it looks like 4, might even be 5 annotations there. And if you select that little icon, it'll open up the annotations for the month, and then you can see all the details. So you can kind of see how this would be pretty valuable when you're going back and trying to do analytics analysis, whether that's at the end of the month or whether that's for the quarter, or maybe you're looking at a full season or a full year range and you want to look at the broad trends up and down. Being able to see where those events are gives you a solid visual representation for what some of the influencing factors could be. It still doesn't tell us cause and effect, and unfortunately not a whole lot in SEO is straightforward and absolute. However, this is the kind of information that will allow you to start trying to figure out what's happening in terms of a positive trend or a negative trend, and really you want to take a scientific approach here. So you're going to look at the annotations, what happened, come up with a hypothesis of what you thought was happening, get a strategy in place, implement it, and then test it to see if that looks like that was the culprit or that was the cause of that specific gain or that specific decrease. So you're still going through, kind of a testing process to figure these things out, but this gives you, the ability to actually go through that process in a little more organized fashion. All right, so let's talk about goals. Goals are really a function within Google Analytics for us to track specific KPIs, key performance indicators, across the website. Okay, you can customize goals and get really advanced. So goals can be things like page views of an important page. They could be page views of like a confirmation form submission. We could set up events within goals that measure, if a video was played. We could, we can measure events like if certain buttons are hit, or you can really customize this quite a bit for whatever big initiatives you have or whatever goals you have for the site. So I'll move here to our screen share. As before, we're in the admin section of Google Analytics. In the far right column, you'll see the third option is goals. Go ahead and select goals. On this page, you're going to see if you already have goals set up, they'll appear there. And what you want to select is new goal. Now, an important note here is that traditionally, Google gives you a limited number of goals, okay? And traditionally, you're not able to delete these goals, which sounds really strange, but Google has some information or has some reasoning for this on how it conflicts data and it creates problems and how things are being measured. But bottom line is, before you go in and create goals, know what you're trying to measure, think it through, and anticipate. You don't want to go in and just go in one day and create like 5 goals without really thinking it through. So just something to consider before you do that. Okay, so we select new goal. We've got a few options here. Under goal setup, the first option you're given is custom versus template. For this exercise, we're just going to set up a really simple goal. So I chose template. If you go into custom, you're going to be given a lot more options in terms of how you can set up these goals. Second field there is forms, is the name of that goal. For this one, we've entered form submission confirmation page. So really what we're doing here is, when you submit a form on this site, in this example, you'll get a thank you page that comes up that says, thank you for submitting your information. So we're going to measure how many of those thank you pages we are generating, and that's really going to be our goal. So we name the goal, and then when we get down to type, you can see there's a lot of options here, even in the template. We've got a destination, which is what we're going to choose, but you can do duration if you're really trying to say, well, I want to measure engagement, and I want people to spend a certain amount of time on the site, and that's one of my goals. Same with pages or screens per session. That's kind of an engagement metric. We may want to be measuring that. And then we have some event options there, played a video or done some other things. And then SMART goals are set up. Those are related to Google AdWords, excuse me. Okay, so once you've filled in this information, you'll go ahead and hit continue. And then you kind of get your second set of options. On that top line there, where that top arrow is, the drop down is either equals to, begins with, or regular expressions. So in this case, we're going to do equals to. And what we're assuming here is that our thank you page, that it is exactly, website.com/thank-you. And that is the only variation that appears when someone submits a form. Okay. Now, if you've got an e-commerce site, you might want to do the begins with option. and then maybe you have something like /checkout, /confirmation, and then some kind of dynamic URL structure like 589 question mark, within your platform. You may have that happen when people go through that checkout process. So what that would allow you to do is track all of those URLs that begin with that folder structure. So that way you're not, it would make it very difficult to track all those otherwise. The section option down there is value, right? So we can add an actual monetary value to whatever this goal is. You've really got to do some calculating on your own end to understand what the value of whatever that goal is. Let's say for the example, we're talking about a submission form, someone that wants to contact you and become a customer. For this specific form, you would want to understand, okay, well, what is our conversion rate from these forms, right? So if we've got 100 forms that are submitted, how many customers are we actually booking from that, or how many transactions are we generating? Then based on that conversion rate, we look at what the average transaction value is, and again, we're doing some estimating here. What's our largest value, what's our lowest value, pick something in the middle, and now all of a sudden you can assign a value to each one of these thank you page submissions, or any of these form submissions, okay? So it can be very useful, and then as you go through your campaign, it'll keep tracking those values, and you'll see those dollars alongside the other metrics. You've got an option for creating a funnel. So this really is where you can create a very specific path of how you want to measure this goal. So let's say you've got either a new product, a new offering, or a new company initiative that's really important, and you've created a custom video that you've invested a lot in, and we want to measure how many people are coming into this page, then going to our contact page, and then actually submitting a form. We would enter those 3 steps in the funnel, and then that would be how we're measuring that goal. The advantage to this is that now we can see how many people are progressing through that funnel through each stage. So this is how we can identify where the problem areas are within our conversion process, right? So we might find out, well, hey, we're getting a lot of traffic coming into the video, everyone's getting to the contact page, but then 80% of our traffic is not getting past that contact page and submitting a form. So then that tells me, okay, there's a problem with that page, or there's a problem with how we're targeting that traffic. Maybe it's the wrong people we're targeting and bringing in there. Either way, you can then start to test different elements on that page and make changes to figure out how you improve the conversion rates across that funnel. Underneath the value and funnel options, you'll see verify this goal. That's a good thing to go ahead and do, because if you've entered your information correctly, hit verify this goal. Google will then kind of calculate, for a specific period of time, how many of those goals. So it says the past 7 days is going to show you how many of those goals you had converted. If you verify and then nothing comes back, then you either didn't have any goals that got hit, or you may not be measuring correctly. So once you hit save, that goal gets saved, and you'll be able to access it from the goals section within Google Analytics. And a really important thing to keep in mind here is that it is not retroactive on the way that it measures. So the day that you create this goal is when it's going to start measuring this data moving forward. So in other words, if I create a goal today, I'm not going to be able to look at year-over-year data, full year-over-year, for 2 years. And this is kind of a disadvantage, and there's some other ways that you can go in to measure these things. But bottom line is, if you're going to set up goals, it's to your advantage to go ahead and get them going as soon as possible so that you can start collecting data. Once you have the goal running and you're collecting data, then we can go in and we can adjust our date range up there on the right. Now we're looking at trends. We go down to the left under conversions, click open goals, and this is the overview tab. You've got some different display options there with a lot of information around your goals, but now we can see what our trend is for goals over this last 30-day period. So it's really useful. It's convenient so that you can just pop open conversions, look at goals, and get some really relevant data. And if you align your goals really closely with your key performance indicators on your campaign, this is a really powerful tool, and one you should definitely be using. All right, so let's hop into Google Search Console. Okay, we're going to review verification, first steps, user permissions, sitemap testing and submission, messages, and crawl errors. Again, tons of information in Search Console. Definitely advise that you go in and spend a lot of time and learn all of this. but what we're looking at today are just some of the more important areas of this tool. All right, so Google Search Console in general is a lot easier to verify because we're just verifying it. It's not like analytics where we're putting in a code that's actually executing something to measure the activity. With Google Search Console, we're really just verifying with Google, hey, we have control over the site. We have permissions to actually access this data. Once you verify, then Google is going to open up that that information, access to information. There's a number of different ways to verify. You can upload an HTML file to your server. You can add a script or a tag to your home page. That's one of the more common ways. You don't have to add it to every page, which is what makes this a lot easier. So you just add it to the home page. You can sign in a domain name provider. The easiest way to do this is to sign in through Google Analytics. So if you're setting up analytics and you're setting up Webmaster Tools, you definitely want to go ahead and do analytics first, and then sign in when you create your account for Search Console with that same email address, either the one that created the analytics account or one that has permission, and then you'll be given the option to just confirm through your analytics account. If you're using an old code, sometimes this doesn't work, but when it does work, it makes it really, really easy. And then Google Tag Manager, if you're using that on your site already, you can verify through that as well. Okay, so once you've verified your site through Search Console, this is one of the kind of intro messages that you get in the messages section that kind of just gives you some of the first things that you should be looking at in setting up Search Console. Okay, so the first thing up there is it says make sure you add both www and non-www versions for your site. Also, if you use the HTTPS protocol, add those variations as well. So we talked about this a little bit in my last webinar on 2016 best practices, but Google does not automatically recognize each of these variations of your website as being part of the same entity, which seems kind of crazy. They should be able to figure that out, but they still have these issues. So what happens is if you have not created any redirects consolidating these different versions, they're actually being recognized in some ways or can be recognized as completely separate sites. This is problematic because you really want to consolidate all of those SEO signals, all of your authority, link juice, etc., onto one version. So let's just say we're going to say that the www is our main version. We want to go in and claim these other versions the same way we did the main Webmaster Tools account. So you're just going to go in and add a site, change the URL based on the other versions, and then you can verify it. Okay, once you verify those other versions, you'll have control of them. You'll see them on your main screen when you log into Google Search Console. And then the next thing that Google is recommending here is that you set a preferred version, right? So this is going to be the source version that you want to rank in Google to appear in search results, the one that you want to forward the other versions to. Okay, so in this case, we'll just say we're going to select the www version as being our preferred version of this site. If you've got duplicates, it'll be for your home page usually and all the pages on your site. So if you've got, homepage.com/product, you're going to want to do 301 redirects from that page, from the non-www version to the www, from the HTTPS version to the www version. I know this is kind of confusing. We can certainly help you with this, and there's a lot of resources online, but creating these redirects is essential. And within Google Search Console, you want to make sure that you're indicating your preferred version so that we're communicating to Google, hey, this is where I'm redirecting all of the other versions to. Okay. Next option is selecting your target country. Super straightforward. Again, Google can usually figure this out, but it's good just to go ahead and give them additional information to make it easy. You want to be able to manage site users, same as analytics. There's a number of different options and permissions, and depending on what you want people to be able to do, you'll want to manage those permissions. Submitting a sitemap is, one of the, pretty important things here within Google Search Console. And a sitemap is just like what it sounds. I mean, we're submitting specifically an XML sitemap that is a map of all the pages on our site that we want Google to index. Google finds most of these pages if your site is coded correctly and is coded cleanly. However, sometimes it runs into issues. If you've got a site with 5,000 pages, there's probably pages that Google is not able to find. So by submitting a sitemap, we make it really easy and say, hey, here's a list. In case you're having problems, go through and index all these pages. And then the last kind of option there is using Search Console. So you can learn really the ins and outs of the full platform, which we definitely recommend that you do. All right. So once we have verified our property, from the main login screen, next to the property itself, you'll have an option for Manage Property. Select that, and then you'll have an option for Add or Remove Users. If you select this option and you don't see Add or Remove Users, then that means you are not a site owner and you have not been given permission. If you don't know that, that can be really confusing and frustrating. So if you don't see it, that's the issue. You don't have the right permissions to be able to manage users. Okay, so go ahead and select Add or Remove Users. That's going to take you to an inner page here. And you've got two options up there, Manage Property Owners and Add a New User. Property owners are going to have the most control. And then users have less permissions. And then you've got a couple different options within users in terms of permissions. So you could pull this up. I mean, bottom line is owners are going to have access to all of the data, all of the tools. They're going to be able to download, make changes to the account, and they're also going to be able to delegate other owners and users. When you get down to users, they're definitely more restricted. They're not going to be able to manage other users. And then within that, you've got full and restricted. Full, you're going to have more, you're going to have more abilities, and restricted is really going to be, read-only, and you're going to be restricted on that data. You can Google this, by the way. If you Google that H1, managing users, owners, and permissions in Search Console, this page should come up pretty easily. All right, so let's move on to Google Search Console sitemap testing and submission. All right, so once we're in Google Search Console, go to your left menu there. Go ahead and open up Crawl, navigate down to Sitemaps, and select Sitemaps. Okay, and then you're going to see a screen that looks like this. Up in the top right-hand corner is an option to add or test sitemap. Okay, then at this point we want to go ahead and add in our sitemap, whatever that XML file name is, and then from there we can actually test that sitemap, and we can submit it if it's cleared. Okay, so once we actually test that sitemap, we'll get this screen where Google is calculated, and you can go in and you can view the test results. Okay, so when we look at this screen, I intentionally kind of created a sitemap that doesn't exist, and they're giving us, a little bit of information on there. So we encountered an error while trying to access your sitemap. Please ensure your sitemap follows our guidelines. Guidelines are listed there, and then to the right, it's basically telling us, hey, we're not finding this sitemap. It basically doesn't exist. Okay, so go ahead, run your test, make sure your sitemap is properly formatted. That is a whole other task. I mean, creating an XML sitemap. There are some auto-generator tools that are out there. You do need to be careful because, especially a lot of these free ones are not necessarily the best. And, some of the dangers of submitting a sitemap that isn't properly formatted, the lowest danger is that, something like this is going to happen where it's not just going to find it. But if you create a sitemap and you've actually accidentally included a whole bunch of pages that you actually don't want indexed, you may be submitting those to Google to crawl. And now all of a sudden you've got a whole bunch of pages, if they're not protected, maybe getting indexed. So that's an issue. So definitely do your testing before you submit. Some of these platforms, like the web development platforms, will have options for sitemap creation, right? So with WordPress, Yoast SEO plugin has some options for sitemap generation. It can save you a whole lot of time and headaches trying to create an XML sitemap. So definitely look for those tools to make it a little easier. All right, so let's look at messages in Google Search Console. Okay, so this is really just a section within Google Search Console where you're going to receive messages directly from Google. Google's a big company, and millions of people have websites, and way more people would try to reach out to Google than they can handle. So this is one of the only places where you would have a direct line of communication with Google, depending on the situation. So, like internally at our agency, every analyst is responsible for checking Google Search Console messages every single day. If you have something traumatic or something that's really impactful happening to your site, there's a good chance that Google has recognized it and they're sending you some messaging. So really important to stay on top of those messages and make sure you're aware if there are any big issues. So some of the things that can come through on Google Search Console messages: security issues, right? So if you've been hacked, or they're identifying malicious code, or maybe you've been uploading a massive amount of files to the server and Google thinks that you've been hacked or something bad is happening, they may tell you within messages. Increases in crawl errors like 404s, 500s. If you have a large spike, a lot of times you'll get that message. Manual penalties. So if you're in a manual penalty, like a Penguin, like a Penguin manual penalty for links, this is where you're going to get notified about that, and that's going to be your only, really your direct line of communication with Google. Mobile usability issues, you can also get notified within Google Search Console within messages, and then review responses. So we had a client not long ago that we started noticing some shakeups in rankings and organic traffic. We investigated the issue. We ended up finding that there was a large number of linking domains, or actually Chinese domains that looked really spammy, that all got added within a really short period of time. So we had that issue that came up in the messages, and then we also had another issue where it looked like this client was getting hacked because they were uploading a massive amount of files. So once we addressed these things, we submitted the site to get reviewed by Google, and then they cleared the site after we addressed it. But if you have any kind of review situation going on with Google, this is going to be where you're communicating. This is what the inside of that looks like. I blocked out some of the URLs here, but see, we had it for this client. We had a review that we had to do because they had had some fishy stuff that was happening on the site. We did submit a disavow links report because we found spammy links. We have new owners that got added in there, and they let you know. Googlebot cannot access CSS and JavaScript files. So there's a really wide variety of notifications that come in here. And you can link this up so that you're getting these notifications to your email box. However, this is super important, so we actually manually check this on a daily basis. All right, so this is Google Search Console messages. We'll move on here into crawl errors. This is another really important area of Google Search Console. There are a lot of tools to check crawl errors, right? So we've got SEMrush, and we've got Deep Crawl, and we've got Moz, and we've got a bunch of these tools, and a lot of them will check for 404 and 500 errors. However, we found in our experience that Google Search Console is really the best place to get this information, just because they find the most and they give you the most complete data. So within Google Search Console, you want to navigate on the side to the crawl menu, open that up, select crawl errors, and then if you see down where the green arrow is, you've got 3 tabs there: server error, soft 404, and not found. Server errors are going to be like your 500 errors, soft 404s, and then not found are your like your 404 page not found errors. If you've got spikes in either soft 404s or server errors, you definitely need to take a look at those. Work with your kind of your server administrator to nail those down and figure out how to solve them. Most of what we deal with in SEO are these 404 errors. Now, this is really a situation where you had a page on your site, it's been indexed, maybe some people link to it from other places, maybe you've got links on your site pointing to it from other places. At any rate, Google is indexing that URL and thinks it's something it wants to serve up, but then when it actually goes there, there's no page. So that creates this page not found error. It's an issue because you're losing, if you have any SEO equity, authority, link juice, all those things going to that page, when that link gets broken, you've now lost that. So that's the first issue. Second issue is when you have a lot of 404s to Google, it just makes your site look like it's broken and it's a bad user experience. So this is why 404 errors are important to monitor and resolve. So once we go over to the not found tab, looks like we've got 159 in this case. You can see the trend across a period of time that shows you, if you've been able to increase or decrease those. These dates are also good things to line up with your Google Analytics annotations. So if you have one where you see a big drop because you put a fix in place, it's probably a good area to put an annotation in Analytics to see if it has a big impact or not. So once you navigate over to that Not Found tab, you can just scroll down a little bit and you have an option for download. You go ahead and select all those pages or the ones that you want to download, and this is your list of 404 pages. And the reason you want to download these is so that you can start creating a 301 redirect map, so that you are redirecting each one of these URLs to a live page that is as closely related to the 404 page as possible. Now the difficult thing here is because these are 404 pages, chances are they don't exist. So if you go in and try to go to that page to say, okay, well, what was this page about? You're not going to be able to go there because it's gone. So just from the information in the URL, you want to try to identify the most relevant page that exists on your site to forward it to. And specifically, you need to execute a 301 permanent redirect. This can be time consuming, but you want to go in and forward these to as close a topically relevant page as possible. You want to avoid mass redirects to the home page. It's really not a best practice, and the reason it's not a best practice is because it's a poor experience for the user. You know, if I'm in a page looking at, you know, a specific type of skis, and maybe I'm looking at, you know, a certain brand ski booth and a certain model, if I go and try to select that page in Google, and then I just get forwarded to the home page, chances are, you know, unless I'm really motivated, I'm out of there. I'm not going to go try to find that page. I'm just gone. On the other side of it, if you could at least send that person to the right category, so they're looking at the right category of product, and maybe the right brand, you know, that's kind of second best if you can't find an individual page. But again, try to avoid 301 redirecting these all to the home page. So if you download these, you'll have the option for CSV or Google Docs. We're usually downloading the CSV. This is kind of what that'll look like. It'll give you the URL, response code, the date detected, when it was last crawled, and this is kind of the base of your 301 redirect map that you'll be creating. Once you've actually created that 301 redirect map and executed your 301 redirects, then you want to go in and mark all those URLs as fixed. So go ahead and select the ones that you addressed, mark them as fixed, and it's going to remove all of those errors from the Search Console display. Okay? Now what we want to happen, what our goal is that all of our 301 redirects have now solved those errors, so when Google goes back and recrawls, now it's going to a relevant place. It doesn't create a 404, and this error doesn't appear back in Search Console. If there's other issues, if things weren't executed correctly, then these errors are going to reappear. If you see errors in there that look like they're for really funky URLs that just don't make sense, you might want to try just removing those and marking them as fixed, and then seeing if they reappear. Because sometimes you'll have really funky, dynamic, long-string URLs that maybe you're going to get dropped out of the index on their own, and you don't want to create redirects for them. The other thing that really you need to keep in mind, if you're doing 301 redirects, make sure that you either really know what you're doing or you're enlisting the help of a consultant or agency. If you screw this up on the formatting side when you're doing 301 redirects, you can really kind of crash the whole site and make it unavailable. So this is one of those areas where you're really impacting things in a big way. There are some plugins that you can use, like for WordPress and some of these other platforms, where you can execute 301 redirects without having to code. If you don't have one of those plugins or an option within your content management system, one of the main ways that this is done is through the htaccess file. And there's a very specific and kind of technical language that you have to use to execute these. And again, if you screw that up, then it can kind of crash the whole site and make it disappear. So when you're going in and doing these things, make sure you're being safe, you're doing your backups, and you know what you're doing. Okay, so this really, I think, concludes our presentation for today. Sorry, I know we went through this pretty fast. Wanted to cover a lot, and again, if you need to go back through, if you have questions, you can contact us. Again, we'll have the slides available for request as well as the video. We do offer free site audits and consultations. That's just part of our process to explore working with different companies. So we'd be happy to do that if you're interested. And if you're in Colorado, we're happy to do an in-person consultation. I do all that myself, so I'd be happy to meet with you and see if we can be of help. Thank you so much. I guess we'll do a little Q&A here.
Yeah, I've got a couple. So one of the first questions is, how can I track and improve e-commerce sales? What is a goal funnel?
Yeah, so there is actually a whole separate section within Google Analytics for e-commerce tracking. I hate to do this, but unfortunately, it would take a long time to go through that explanation and setup. But there are a lot of resources on it, but you're going to want to investigate the actual e-commerce, specifically e-commerce tracking section within Google Analytics. You can still do some of this within goals, but you're going to be a lot better off going through the e-commerce setup.
Cool. Another question is, do you have any resources for 301 redirect plugins?
Cool. Yeah, so we mainly use WordPress and develop in WordPress. We use simple 301 redirects. That's the main one that we use, and it's worked pretty well.
That was good. Another question is, what type of prep work do I need to do before getting into Google Analytics?
What kind of prep work?
I guess so.
Well, I mean, I would say you definitely want to nail down what pages you want to track. You know, so if you've got a content management system that's creating a whole lot of dynamic pages, different duplicate versions, that kind of thing, you know, you're going to want to, you know, decide early on if you want to be tracking those pages. In a lot of cases, you may not want to be, and in other cases, you may want to be. So I think that's important. One thing that I should add that we didn't cover is you do want to go in and confirm that your analytics has been installed properly, and that can get pretty sophisticated, but one of the tools that we use is Screaming Frog, and you can use it to actually scan for that specific code across the whole site, and then you can confirm that it is on all the pages that you want it to be on, or at least get a count of how many pages it's included on.
Great. And another question is, who do I contact for an audit to be done to my website? Do they go directly to you, Chris, or should they email you?
Yeah, they can email me directly, and then I'll have one of my analysts kind of jump in. We'll perform an audit, and then we can follow up to review.
Sounds good. Alrighty, that does it for our questions. Again, we've been recording this webinar, so feel free to contact me, tdavis@snowsports.org, for a recorded version of this webinar. Actually, one quick question just popped up, Chris. Excuse me. What's the best way to track social media to web?
There is a section within Google Analytics for social media in that sidebar. So that's probably the first place that I would look, is within the social media section on that left sidebar within the Google Analytics dashboard.
Great. And Chris, do you want to just give everybody your email address as well, so if they want a consultation in-house or email you some questions directly?
Yeah, absolutely. So my email is chris@coloradoseopros.com. You can also call into the office if you leave a voicemail. That'll get emailed to me as well at 720-874-9786.
Great. All right. Well, everybody, thank you so much for joining this webinar, and look for more webinars in the future. And I want to thank Chris and his team for putting all this together. And yeah, hope everybody has a great weekend. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Bye.